Good afternoon, everyone. I am the next reporter, and first, I'm going to tackle about comparative theory. I mean, comparative advantage. First, it was introduced by David Ricardo, an English economist, and he introduced the theory comparative advantage on 1870, and he take the comparative advantage theory from the absolute advantage, which occurs in a country that um, has a capable enough to produce products and services. And for the comparative advantage theory, it occurs when a country cannot produce a product more efficiently than the other country. However, this country can produce the product better and more efficiently than it does other goods. So comparative advantage is what um, what can which country which can I mean which a country can produce a product or services efficiently to this place. And let's take a look for this example. Um, Simplified hypothetically, example to illustrate the subtle difference between these principles is that Miranda is a Wall Street lawyer who charged $500 per hour for her legal services. It turns out that Miranda can also type faster than the administrative assistants in her office, who are paid $40 per hour. So, even though Miranda clearly has the absolute advantage in both skill sets, so she should do both jobs. So, I mean, does she need to do both jobs? No. For every hour Miranda decides to type instead of do legal work, so she would be giving up $460 in income. So her productivity and income will be highest if she specializes in the higher paid legal services and hires the most qualified administrative assistant who can type faster, although a little slower than Miranda. But by having both Miranda and her assistant concentrate on their respective tasks, for their overall productivity as a team is higher. So this is comparative advantage. So So it is a comparative advantage which a person or a country will specialize in doing what they do relatively better. So in reality, the world economy is more complex and consists of more than two countries or and products. Barriers to trade may exist and goods must be transported, stored, and distributed. However, the simplistic example demonstrates the basis of the comparative advantage theory. So in this example, Miranda is a lawyer, is a street Wall Street lawyer. Um, her services will be probably paid by $500 per hour, and also she has the skills of who can type faster that will charge her a $40. So the relatively here is that the Miranda can do um another task, another services other than her legal fees, other than her legal services. And for the next theory is um Heckscher-Ohlin theory, or also known as a factors proportions theory. This theory was introduced by Eli Heckscher and Bertil Ohlin, a Swedish economist in 1900s. So these theories focus their attention on how a country could gain comparative advantage by producing products that utilize factors that were in abundance in this country. Um, what we mean by utilized factors, so these are uh, based on production factors such as land, labor, and capital, and that includes plants and equipment. So, to determine that the cost of any factor or resource was a function of supply and demand, which we all know what is supply and demand, right? So, it stated that countries would produce and export goods that require resources or factors that were in great supply and cheaper production factors. So, this theory is not only tackle about uh, a person or a country that can produce a products or services, but also on how they can use these factors to produce products and services. For example, China and India are home to cheap, large pools of labor. So these places is 'di ba? China and India, I mean, especially China, it has a large population scale, which means they can produce more on labor services. So these countries may have become the optimal locations for labor intensive industries like textile and garments. So these places they can do services, they can produce workers and do services for like textile and garments. And the next theory is a Leontief paradox. Um, this theory is, this paradox is quite interesting. But first, I will introduce to you who studied this and who introduced this theory. And it is Vasily W. Leontief. Actually, he is a Russian-born American economist in 1950s, but he studied the U.S. economy. So, what we have here is Leontief has a actual data, and it shows that the U.S. economy will have a capital intensive goods. So, which means they can produce products and services through investment, or they may have the equipment, but um, the comparative advantage theory, or also the proportions theory stated that the U.S. economy can produce labor-intensive goods, which means they can produce workers, they can do services, they can do labor services. Specifically export, so which means they can do labor services to other countries, which is reverse of what was expected by the factors of proportions theory. The proportions theory expected that the U.S. economy will have labor-intensive goods. Hence, what Leontief has the actual data is that the U.S. economy will have capital-intensive goods, which is really opposite, right? But historically, economists noted that labor in the U.S. was both available in steady supply and more productive than in many other countries. So hence, it made sense to export labor-intensive goods because um because over decades um no I mean because the U.S. economy they have the efficient uh, laborers. Um, so in the record, we can see that the U.S. laborer can do services than produce in capital or than producing goods or I mean than do some investment or do some capital. So over the but over decades, many economists have theories and data to explain and to also minimize the impact of the paradox to avoid conflict because it's really the they have this confusion about which will be follow. It will be either the actual data or the what they have this theory. However, what remains clear is that internationally trade is complex, which means numerous and often changing factors. So, what in enlighten these economies is that over time over time there is a lot changing factors happen and um, we cannot avoid that we cannot avoid that to exist. Hence, we will just adapt and try to study the effect. I mean the impact on this to our economy. So for the next theory, it is a modern or firm-based trade theories. So um, it is really a contrast to classical country-based trade theories. So these country-based theories couldn't adequately address the expansion of either MNCs or inter-industry trade, which refers to trade between two countries of goods produced in the same industry. So, this modern or firm-based trade theory is that how do I explain this? Between these two countries that have that have the same uh, firm-based, I mean like if country A and country B produce um, products, the same products, but they have different features. They just have the same ideal type of products. Uh, so they tend to um, they tend to interchange or collaborate this industry. Like for example, Japan to Germany. I mean, for example, Japan produces Toyota and Germany produces Mercedes Benz. So Japan can um, can trade Toyota to Germany, while Germany can trade Mercedes Benz to Japan. They will have a interchange business. I mean they can incorporate their businesses from from place to place because they have the same firm, they have the same products. And also for country similarity theory, it was introduced by Stefan Linder, a Swedish economist in 1961. He tried to explain the concept of intra-industry trade. So for Linder's theory, he proposed that consumers in countries that are in the same or similar stage of development would have similar preferences. Whereas for the firm-based theory, Linder suggested that companies first produce for domestic consumption. So, for Linder's theory, he suggested, or he suggested that the consumers in each country that have a similar stage of development might have a similar preferences. And for the firm-based theory, what Linder trying to tell is that the companies that has a similar production for yeah so for firm-based theory, the companies that have a similar production may have a similar producing, diba? Like, so for the firm-based theory, what Lender trying to tell is that the companies that have a first production for domestic consumption, which means what companies that has a um, similar production, that both companies help help the to revive the countries, for example, the laborers and the production. And for Linder's country similarity theory then states that most trade in manufactured goods will be between countries that has a similar per capita income, and intra-industry trade will come. That is that their intra-industry trade is common. And for the product life cycle theory was introduced by Raymond Vernon. He is he is a Harvard Business School professor in 1960, and he is originating in the field of marketing and has a three distinct and product life cycle theory has a three distinct stages. These are the new product, maturing product, standardized product. It is a useful theory to explain the manufacturing industry success in the U.S. So, these stages explain in a manufacturing industry that the product is never end. So I'll try to explain that later. So the product life cycle theory has been less able to explain current trade patterns where innovations and manufacturing occurs around the world. So what I'm talking about earlier, that the product never ends. So we're talking about innovation. So at first, you're trying to um, introduce a product that is new to the market. That's what you call new product. And by introducing it into the market, you will encounter uh, changes, improvements that was suggested to your product. So that will be maturing product. And hence, throughout the years passes, the your product was used in the marketplace, was also known, so they will have a standardized product. So let's take example for the cell phone. Before, in our I think in our parents' generation, the cell phone was introduced. At first, their cell phone, their mobile phone, um, introduced in the market and used by the people, but they ask improvement. They suggest new features of the phone. So, there's a maturing product. I think you're familiar with Nokia. It's a brand of the phone. So during our parents' generation, Nokia is just like a, I think, iPhone or Samsung, like that. And I know not Nokia. I think there is there is way before the Nokia. But let's just try example with Nokia. And yeah, I remember. It's Motorola. I think if you ask your parents, there's no parents that don't know about Motorola. So the new product there is Motorola, right? And the maturing product is the Nokia, because Nokia features had a 3310, the one that we can folding phone, and throughout years in our generation, we have now the Android phone. So you can see the changes from new product to standardized product. That's what we call product life cycle theory. And what I mean that the product here has no end or never end is because you're familiar with we all know about the trend, right? If 3 months after you purchase a phone, there will be a new trend of the phone. Probably it does a changes in the camera, in the system, or in the program, or etc. in that phone. After 3 months, or after 6 months, or after a year, there might be a difference in function of your phone that you bought than the other one. So there might be a system that is not applicable to your phone. So that system is no longer used. Your phone that the system that you cannot acquire in your phone is no longer used. So what the other manufacturer industry did is that you're going to sell your phone, and the manufacturing industry, they're going to get some useful what they call species. I don't know what they did, what they called it. They will get something in your phone that can be still useful and adapt it to a new product. So we're going to start, and again we're going to go back to the new product. Yes, it is a new product, but the new product came from the previous product. So that's what I mean. And I think that will be all, and thank you, and have a great day.